Welcome back to Autism Live. Joining us in the studio, our wonderful guest, Ben Avchen. I've got the name right now.
Yes.
You won't believe, I don't even want to tell you what I said in the first hour because it was something that had none of the consonants that are in your name. It was like some wild interpretation of your name. So I'm glad I got it finally right. Thrilled to have you here with us. I met you for the first time at the Spec Labs
El Rey show, yes.
Yes, at the El Rey Theater, which we were live. If you guys missed that, it's still in our Facebook chain. And so many fabulous performers were there, including the gentleman who is the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants and his band, which they were amazing, were they not?
Yeah, they were really, really good. And you know, Tom Kenny, such a class act. He really made that night phenomenal. And same thing with Jason and Garth as well.
Well, Jason and Garth, who are the creators and heads of Spec Labs, and we've had them on the show before. They are two gentlemen that I hold in the highest esteem. They are remarkable, and the things that they do with their students are always so interesting, so diverse, so fabulous that I love getting to go to anything that they do. I understand that you have done a little bit of work with them, that you have you've been someone who you've taken some of their classes. Is that what I'm trying to say?
Well, I have taken their animation class, but I'm kind of a special case because Jason has actually asked me to help edit a lot of their projects because I am a film editor, and something I am going to school for is, you know, film editing. I'm going to a private film school in Tarzana called Columbia College Hollywood and pursuing a Bachelor's of Fine Arts.
I did not know that in Tarzana you could get a BFA in film editing. This is very exciting to me, and I'm going to have more questions about that. But we want to start by talking a little bit about your story, because I understand that you identify as somebody who is on the autism spectrum. You got a diagnosis when?
I was diagnosed at 2 years old. I was, I believe, 2 years, 1 month old. It was in April of 1998, where my parents both took me to see a speech therapist or speech pathologist who brought up the word autism, and she referred them to somebody who could, you know, help me. And from that point, I was officially diagnosed with autism, I believe PDNOS, is that?
PDD-NOS,
PDD-NOS, yes, not otherwise specified.
Right. And so I'm guessing that you had a little bit of language then, if you were PDD-NOS, or no? What do your parents say that you were exhibiting at that time that made everybody think autism? Were you talking?
I was not talking.
At all?
No, that was the first thing that was absolutely crucial to my development, was to get me talking.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you don't have memories of being two.
I don't think anybody does.
Right? But when did you first hear the word autism in conjunction with yourself? How old were you?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I've been trying to figure that out for the longest time, but I believe it was either middle or high school. I think I know the first time I heard the term special education was in middle school. I believe it was 7th grade, where my special education teacher who taught study skills, which is, you know, that classroom where you get to basically get a bunch of help from people who, you know, are trying to help people with, you know, disabilities and other related disorders. And they brought up, oh, you know, you guys are in special education, and, you know, this is a special education class.
Right.
And that's when a lot of people's reactions might tend to differ. What I mean by that is some people might think, oh, you know, I'm a special case, there's something wrong with me. To me, I just thought of it as, oh, cool, I'm special. Because of the term special education. So I saw it more as a positive. And to this day, I still see it as nothing but something that has positively impacted me.
I love that answer. So to get from 2, where you weren't talking, and as you said, mission number 1 was to get you talking, and here you are. You are this incredibly articulate young man who came up to me while I was there at the El Rey, and you said, "Hi, I'm Ben, and I'd like to give you my card," which led to me having you come here. I mean, so how old are you now?
I'm 22.
Okay, I know a lot of 22-year-olds who would not have the confidence to come up to somebody and say, "Here's my card. I'd like to introduce myself." So forgive me for saying to you, there are a lot of people who are going to look at you and they're going to go, "How did you get from there to here?" Because we all want to know that, because everybody wants to go with you. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Because we look at you and you are what we all hope for. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm an inspiration to a lot of people.
There we go. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Of course you are. But regardless of ever getting a diagnosis, like, I think when people think, how would I like my 22-year-old son to behave and feel about himself, not because they have a diagnosis of autism, just in general, how would I like my 22-year-old son to be? And I think we all would agree, you're hitting it out of the park. You're polite. You are clearly somebody who is intelligent and well-spoken, can advocate for yourself in college, and have a sense of purpose and direction. That's good across the board. But then we're being told, "Oh, you have this autism diagnosis and you weren't speaking," and everybody's leaning in going, "Okay, how'd you get from there to here?" So tell us, how did you get from there to here?
Well, I first want to add that, a common reaction is, you're on the autism spectrum, or you're autistic? You don't look autistic.
Right.
You seem normal to me.
Yeah.
And, the story about how I got to here today is a long one, but I want to share that, in the beginning, it was, it was a challenge for my parents. And I really, in order to get to this point, like you said, I had to begin communication. That was, crucial to my development. And luckily, I started talking by the age of 3. Now, they say that there's something called neuroplasticity in the brain. And what that means is that the brain is shaping and molding up until the age of 3. That's what I believe researchers say.
Yeah.
Like, my mom and I fought for the longest time that, it was actually age 5, but I did a little bit of digging. I learned that it was actually age 3. So I think one of the biggest things about my success is, I really have to give credit to that autism diagnosis, and credit to the people who have helped shape me, like my speech therapist when I was 2 years old, and later down the road, my teachers and my friends and everybody who's had a positive impact in my life and have approached me and gone for, "Oh, this kid has potential."
Yeah.
And so they looked more at me in a positive light rather than a negative light. And that's something I think is extremely important.
And thank you for being willing to share that with us, because I know that isn't really the thing that you most want to talk about. And I always feel like apologetic about it, because I know that our audience is like, "But how did he get there?" But you're a person working on things, and that's really why we've invited you on the show.
Yeah.
Because you're working on things. So let's get to talking about, so you're in college right now, 5 months before, I said before you have your BFA, that's in 5 months, but you're almost there.
Less than 5 months.
Less than 5 months. So
it's going to come by quick.
But I understand you're already working on a documentary.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that, because right now I'm currently in production of a documentary film I'm producing and directing called The Buzz in Ben. And that's, 4 words, The Buzz. The kind of the naming convention of this, it took me a while to figure out the name, but I had the idea of buzz meaning, the buzz that's going on in my brain.
Yeah.
And, all these creative endeavors that I'm doing, and I'm getting excited, but...
That's okay. We enjoy excitement here. But I like that, because you know, you're an interesting person and we'd like to know what's going on in your head, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of what you're talking about. So this documentary, you're going to reveal to us all the things going on in your head?
Yeah, exactly. And it's going to tackle a lot of the struggles of my past, but also about the successes of my journey. And I'm really excited to be working on this documentary, and I'm excited for when we finally get to reveal it to the world. It's for my thesis film, which is, you know, supposed to be a short 10 to 15 minute project that we do in our senior year of college. But I came about it with the approach of, you know what, I see this as potentially being a feature film. And I've been out shooting documentary interviews with people from my past, such as, you know, my family, my friends, teachers, and anyone else who I've inspired or who has inspired me.
Great.
And if I could talk a little bit more about the documentary.
Sure, absolutely.
Because this is, you know, such a passion project for me right now, because I want the world to know, you know, that I want people to understand that, you know, autism doesn't have to be a disability. In fact, I see my autism as nothing but an ability. And I honestly think it's ironic in a way, because the fact that, you know, I'm on the autism spectrum and that the autism community has been so wonderful, it's actually provided me more opportunities being on the spectrum rather than if I were just neurotypical or normal.
And I want people to hear that, because for people who have very young kids and they're in the thick of starting intervention and getting diagnosed, and their child still isn't talking, and this moment in time feels very painful to them, right? Yeah. I want you to see this young man and hear what he's saying, because so often they will hear people who've been longer, parents who've been longer on this journey and have kids that are a little bit older, and they will hear people say things like, you know, we look at autism now as being a gift that we were given, and sometimes they get mad when they hear that, because they're in this one slice in time where it feels painful. But I want you to hear what this young man is saying about how he feels about himself and the things that having this diagnosis, and I agree with you, I love what Howie Mandel says. He says, let's stop talking about disability and let's talk about this ability.
Exactly.
And whatever that is, let's talk about that. And that when we open our minds to that, all kinds of things are possible, and I hope that this show showcases that, which is part of the reason why I wanted Ben to come on the show, so you can hear his experience of where he's coming from. And then hopefully we get to see all of that in your documentary. So what's the timeline on this? When do you think that we're going to be able to see the Buzz and Ben?
I'm going to take a guess and say a trailer maybe in June.
Okay.
Possibly a 10 to 15 minute short, which my goal is, I'm hoping that, you know, we can start post-production or the editing process by next month.
Okay.
Because we're almost done with shooting, you know, all the interviews, and I actually have a big bunch of interviews lined up for this weekend, so that's in the back of my mind right now. I'm getting ready for that.
Okay.
But then after that is, you know, just a few interviews left, and then after that I could start cutting it together. And by the way, it's nice because I actually have access to a bunch of raw footage from my childhood. And that shows a lot of the meltdowns, some of the creations I've made, and more into that later. And also some of my, you know, raw footage from video projects I've done in the past, since, you know, I'm so into, you know, filmmaking.
Yes, absolutely. And I know we're going to talk at some point about recommendations that you have for parents, especially of newly diagnosed kids. But having that videotape, a lot of times parents don't want to videotape because when something negative is happening, it's not our first instinct to go, hey, let me pick up a camera and document this painful moment when my child's having a meltdown and when I feel like I don't know what's going to happen. But we see in a lot of people that it's actually very helpful. It's helpful in helping to figure out what's going on with the child and solve it. Because tantrums are a form of communication, and when we give better ways of communicating, tantrums go away. But also, you know, I know you know, a lot of people have reported that being able to look back on it and see those things on tape is healing for them and their parents later on when they're not in that space anymore. And when you're ready to make a documentary, the footage is there.
Yeah. And I like to add that, you know, when I was a kid, when I'd see the camera, I'd get even more frustrated. It's like, why are you recording me? I don't want you to record. So my mom would have to secretly record it and to get the audio of it.
So she was hiding cameras underneath things?
Yeah, and it's a little bit complicated, but, you know, once I get into editing the film, I'm going to figure something out.
Okay.
But there's a lot of footage in there, and it's not just going to talk about the negatives. I really want the documentary overall to be a success story. It is a success story. It's my success story about how I overcame the obstacles of autism, and, you know, in spite of all that, you know,
I think we all want to see that.
I was able to, you know, follow my dreams and, you know, make it to where I am today.
Exactly. So at some point, the Buzz and Ben will be able to see it, and you'll make sure that we can know so that we know where to see it and when to see it. But I'm curious, what are your hopes and dreams for later on? You're getting a BFA in television and film. So what does it, earlier today we talked about creative visualization and dreams and how we all have to have dreams that we're moving towards. Where do you think you're going to be in 10 years? What do you want to be doing?
Oh, that's a good question, because I'm actually not sure. Like, I think my career can go in any direction at this point. Like, I'm emphasizing in editing, and that's where I want to start out is, you know, editing projects, maybe get an editing internship with a major studio, maybe continue with Jason and Garth with Spectrum Laboratory.
Well, I wished you'd said something sooner, because, you know, I know people who have a very small studio that sometimes look for editing interns. Here. But you're about to graduate. So we only take students, and if anybody's interested, who they have to get course credit while they're here. But we are always looking for editing interns. So it would have been nice to have had you a year ago. That would have been super fun. But we can't afford you now. That's the point. You have too many skills. Well, I know that all those things are going to happen for you and much more. I can't wait to see the Buzz and Ben. We said before that we were going to talk a little bit about advice for parents. So for all the parents that are out there watching right now, some of whom have those very recently diagnosed kids, what do you want to say to them, Ben?
Please don't lose hope, because it's going to be different. It's going to be a different experience.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be typical. It's, you know, your child on the spectrum is going to definitely have a lot of struggles, and, you know, you as a parent or guardian are going to have a lot of struggles as well. And I just want to say that, you know, you just keep pushing them little by little, and, you know, not too much to the point where, you know, they can't handle it. You know, you help them, you know, make small little victories at a time. And, you know, you gradually introduce them to new things, and you eventually get them to come out of their comfort zones a little bit. You know, I know that a big thing that helped was positive reinforcement and a lot of encouragement, because your child might be really creative and have something to share with the world, or, you know, they might have a meltdown simply because they're trying to communicate something to you, and they can't find the words, and they end up lashing out, having a meltdown, and might start throwing things. You know, it might seem like it's, you know, a major tantrum. It's not a tantrum. It's way more than that.
Yeah. And you know, you mentioned being encouraging, and I see in a lot, because, you know, I have a son who's 15, and he's my world. Like, there's nothing I wouldn't do for him. I think he's the most awesome thing ever invented. And, you know, I wouldn't change anything about him. He is superlative, right? And I think sometimes he doesn't quite know what to do with that. But I have seen across the years and looking at people like you and other individuals that I look at and I go, oh, look at how amazing you are. You know, what did your parents do that helped you to be this amazing? And what I hear a lot of times is your parents were supportive. So here you are, you're a film major. At what point did you start wanting to videotape, and how did your parents support that?
That's not a good question.
I'm so glad you like my questions. I'm deeply
I'm showing very enthusiastic, signs of liking your questions. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, I started, picking up the camera when I was like 6 years old, and eventually I just fell in love with the craft of, making videos. Granted, this was way before I knew what editing was. I mean, once I discovered the concept of editing, the whole world changed. It was like, you could do this and you could do that and you could put this here and put that there and, turn it into something even more than just, roll camera, cut, okay, that's the project. Because as a kid, I started out with an old, I want to say a VHS type DV camera, and I'd have play dates with my friends, and we'd ended up acting out these scripts I'd write of my cartoon character Buzzy the Bee, and he's also inspiration / driving force for this documentary film I'm producing. Also, one of the reasons why I decided to make my username Buzz N Ben with the letter N. I've actually had that username for over 10 years now, and that also inspired the name of the documentary. But anyway, getting off topic there. But, when I was a kid, I'd have these, play dates with my friends, and we'd act out in front of this camera with these plush toys. And
which sounds exactly like James Cameron and Steven Spielberg. They did exactly the same things as kids.
It does kind of sound like that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, but your parents didn't squash that. Did they say, hey, do you need help with this? What did your parents do about this?
Well,
did they feed into it?
Well, one of the things I'd do is I'd make a whole mess of the living room, but my mom wouldn't say, you're making a mess of the living room. Okay. No, she'd encourage it. She'd like,
I love that.
Except when I'd have a meltdown.
Yeah.
Because as a young aspiring director, something I kind of struggled with a lot was to communicate my vision to my friends. And when I couldn't communicate my vision to my friends, or they'd goof off, or, they wouldn't do something, the way
they weren't taking it as seriously as you were.
Yeah, and if they didn't, do it the way I intended, I might lash out, have a meltdown. And then what would happen is my mom would ask them to leave, and then I'd end up having a meltdown in front of my mom. Be like, why did you do that? Why did you ask them to leave? We were so close to getting this done.
Right.
But, at that point, it was too late. I was already out of control. And then the most she could really do is, try and calm me down and,
But that set it up for you parameters of, you have to find a way to be able to communicate with your peers. Otherwise, the whole thing shuts down. Are you a better director because of that, do you think?
I think I'm improving. Yeah. I think as a director in general, that's something I also aspire to possibly get into, like possibly transitioning from editing to directing later down in my career. Again, I'm not sure. It could go really in any direction.
Well, I keep saying director because you are a director, because you're directing your own documentary.
Yeah.
And so, the truth is, even though your passion has been editing, you're a director. And I notice also that, and you had mentioned you're into animation as well.
Oh, yeah. Actually, thanks to Danny Bowman, who is also a young artist on the autism spectrum. If you're watching, Danny, hi. But if not, I'll show this to you later. But
there we go. But Danny's wonderful. We've had her on the show several times. She's so talented. And at such a young age began doing her own films, animating her own films, and then teaching others.
Yeah, age 11, that's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a brilliant person. But I love the fact that she spends so much of her time teaching others.
Yeah, and that brings me into something I'm also interested in, is possibly becoming a teacher.
Oh.
It's in the back of my head, and the more I think about it, the more possible I think it is, you know.
So you got lots of options.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities for me, and I believe something that I struggle with is, you know, there's things I got to say no to, there's things I like got to turn down. I can't do it all, but I can try and do as much of it as I can.
You're amazing, Ben. Are you an only child or do you have siblings?
I'm an only child.
Okay. Your parents, I can't, sometime I'd like to meet them. I'm sure that they're amazing people because you're an amazing person.
Yes, I'd love for you to meet my mom. She offered to drive me today, but I came here by myself.
But you were independent, which is also impressive and inspirational to all of us. Well, remarkable. If people want to know more about you and they want to, like, do you have a Facebook page?
I have a website.
Oh, well then.
It's kind of been on off in the works, me constantly trying to figure out, you know, it's kind of, it's up.
Okay, so where should they go? What's the website?
The website is buzzandben.com. That's B-U-Z-Z, the letter N-B-E-N.com. And you can find my projects, what I've currently been doing, my social media, my YouTube, you know, has a lot of my stuff from the past.
Okay. It's impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm so thrilled that I got to meet you. Thank you for coming up to me with your business card because it led to this. And
yeah, thank you for inviting me. This has been phenomenal.
This has just been wonderful, and I know that you've provided a lot of inspiration for everybody. We'll have to have you back. And maybe you'll come back and show us your trailer when your trailer's done.
Oh, that would be wonderful. You know, I'm trying to get the word out there, you know.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing will be, you know, getting the film out there, getting it distributed. Possibly starting a Kickstarter for it.
Yeah.
Maybe in June, along with, you know, a trailer for the film. Like, the film is almost done, you know. It's just, like I said, getting it out there.
There you go. Maybe get yourself to Sundance. Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be fantastic. Honestly,
that would, like, let's say
that's
going to happen.
In the back of my head, that's kind of a goal.
That's buzzing back there. All right. Well,
thanks. that was a good point. Buzzing.
That's buzzing back there. So let's say that, you know, next year at this time you're going to be sitting here talking to me about how you just got back from Sundance. That would be cool. Would that not?
I'm really hoping it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, hard work, and you're doing the hard work, and that's how that happens. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about creative visualization and how picturing things like Ben going to Sundance, how those can help you to de-stress and get where you want to go. So thank you so much for being here. Stick with us.